Chapter 596, Advent 2. With a sigh, the demon king of incarceration turned around. He saw destruction advancing, wrapped in dizzying colors, and the ash and light left by the oxidized members of graceful radiance scattering in the air. Ahead there was Raphael on his Pegasus, leading the flying squadron. On the ground, the divine army was screaming to forget their terror as they advanced. He saw Eugene unable to move. The demon king of incarceration understood that Eugene had no choice but to freeze in such a situation. The demon king of incarceration's power had ultimately failed to drive Eugene to despair, but the current situation would inevitably make him despair. It was enough to bring Eugene to despair. "Are you despairing because what you pursued has come to naught?" the demon king of incarceration asked. He sighed again and wore a bitter smile. "Do you despair seeing those who revered you sacrificing their lives in vain?" The demon king of incarceration began to walk. Chains that had appeared out of nowhere dragged along the ground with his steps. Before the inescapable and irresistible destruction. "Do you also finally succumb to despair?" he questioned. Eugene had won the war against Helmuth and the demon king of incarceration. However, he could not win this current battle. The demon king of incarceration could too easily foresee and be certain of the outcome of this fight. Eugene and his comrades no longer had the strength left to fight. Or so he thought. "Ah," the demon king of incarceration suddenly uttered. He stopped walking. It was not a sigh but an exclamation that escaped him. Eugene must be despairing now. At the moment when everything he and his comrades had hoped to save had come to naught, feeling despair was inevitable. In the distant past, the demon king of incarceration had felt the same. He had wanted to overthrow the demon king. He wanted to save the world. He had really been on the brink of achieving it but had fallen at the last moment. A trusted comrade had become the demon king, and the world he wanted to save was destroyed. The demon king of incarceration hadn't always been fixated on the future rather than the present. Time and again as he faced new beginnings he had thought, this time for sure. He had hoped for a different outcome this time. Not to comply with destruction and move on to the next era but to end destruction in the present. He had failed many times. He had lost much, filled many voids, seen and embraced much and yet lost again. He had become alone many times. He had despaired, and even this despair he had incarcerated in the abyss, to the depths of his own being. One would be met with despair when their desires and goals crumbled into nothing. The demon king of incarceration knew this despair all too well. He also knew that it was not something that could be easily shaken off. Would Eugene give up and choose death here? He thought so. Or perhaps he would run away in terror. Although he saw the latter as almost impossible, stubbornly struggling against the impossible was something this man might do. But look. Blood trickled from Eugene's clenched lips. The eyes that had been clouded with despair were flickering with light once more. His trembling fingers formed into a fist. Yet Eugene's feet did not move forward. Without turning away his bloodshot eyes, Eugene took a step back while staring ahead. Instead he held back Sienna, who was screaming and trying to rush forward, and made Christina step back. He also helped the fallen Molin to stand. "Ah!" the demon king of incarceration exclaimed again. There was no longer any despair in Eugene's eyes. He barely kept his anger under control while choosing to step back instead of advancing. He did not choose defeat. Instead he chose to honor the wishes of those who had chosen death for him, those who had advanced forward without orders. If he died now, everything would end. Eugene understood this clearly, and the demon king of incarceration couldn't help but admire Eugene's resolve. Eugene Lionheart still hadn't given up and rose above his despair. He clung to his desire not just for a future beyond the current era but for a future now, vowing that the deaths of the many who sacrificed themselves for him would not be in vain. Had Eugene succumbed to despair, chosen to flee in terror rather than retreat in hate and determination, it would have been unavoidable. That would have been the conclusion the demon king of incarceration came to. Although this era faced a different ending from what the demon king of incarceration had originally envisioned, he would have judged this world to be done for and prepared for the next era. But now he did not entertain such thoughts. This world could not be discarded. Instead, the demon king of incarceration thought, how dazzling is the light oxidizing without fear of death. Even before the unstoppable forces of destruction and death, they were united. They burned their lives willingly for values and glory far greater than their own lives. The demon king of incarceration wasn't particularly fond of zealots. Most gods he encountered during his eternal life were incompetent, and the fact that he created the world from the beginning innumerable times meant that the demon king of incarceration himself was closer to being a god than those beings. But now, the demon king of incarceration even felt a commitment and light in those zealots at the forefront that he had never paid attention to before. Admirable. Thus, the demon king of incarceration couldn't help but sincerely marvel. Crack. The demon king leaped high off the ground. He instantly crossed the distance and landed between Raphael's leading flying squadron and the demon king of destruction. The demon king of incarceration? Raphael, who had been fervently calling for martyrdom, cried out in surprise. The demon king of incarceration didn't wait to hear the rest and moved his hand. Clang clang. Numerous chains sprang from the demon king's arm. Fwoosh. The sky split wide open. The chains from the demon king had opened a portal in space. It was impossible for him to open a portal to a distant place, but for now this was sufficient. Though he felt his head spin and his breath was caught, the demon king ignored the cries of existence and swung another chain. "What are you doing?" Raphael screamed as he hastily pulled on Apollo's reins, but he couldn't resist the storm raised by the demon king. The flying squadron, faced with the spreading colors of destruction, was sucked into the portal opened by the chains of incarceration. Indeed, the demon king of incarceration observed as he gasped for air and turned his head. Even though he had snatched prey right from its mouth, it did not pay attention to the demon king of incarceration. From the beginning, it had not acknowledged any existence other than Eugene. It had merely erased the moths flying towards it. "You don't even pay attention to me," the demon king of incarceration said with a self-mocking smirk as he fell. Phew. The demon king of incarceration curled up as he inhaled deeply. His overtaxed body screamed as it collapsed, but the demon king of incarceration did not stop. As he fell to the ground, he raised both his hands high, then lowered them. Whoosh. When the demon king's hands touched the ground, countless chains surged from the earth. The chains intertwined and formed a massive barrier. The demon king of incarceration staggered to his feet while gasping for breath, then spat out blood. Eugene gasped. As he stepped back, he saw the fallen form of the demon king of incarceration before him. The demon king of incarceration spat out blood repeatedly, then lifted his head while taking labored breaths. "You know what that is," said the demon king of incarceration. The voice that reached him was so weak it seemed it might cut off at any moment. Gasping for breath, the demon king of incarceration looked back towards Eugene. "Vermouth," Eugene responded in a soft voice. Sienna and the saints were startled by his answer and turned towards him. The demon king of destruction stood before the wall of chains in a human form wrapped in chaotic colors. But Eugene could feel vermouth from it. He was certain that it was vermouth. "That's right," the demon king of incarceration said while wiping the blood dripping from his lips with the back of his hand. "I don't know why I failed to sense that the seal was broken, and I don't know why it appeared here." Creak creak. The demon king of destruction, vermouth began to move again. As the distance closed between vermouth and the chains raised by the demon king of incarceration, the chains trembled even more. "Whether vermouth's ego has been devoured, I'm not sure. But it was drawn here because of you," said the demon king of incarceration. Eugene silently clenched his fists. "You should not feel guilty. Rather take pride, Hamel. When you were Agaroth, you engraved a wound inside the demon king of destruction. Your existence is imprinted at the core of destruction," the demon king of incarceration explained. Creak creak. The sound of chains also began to echo from the body of the demon king of incarceration. Aware of the noise emanating from his body, the demon king took another deep breath. "Through that imprint, destruction felt your presence. It came here because it cannot tolerate your existence. So you can be proud, Hamel." The demon king of destruction sensed that your sword could reach it. The divine army's advance halted. They were wary of the demon king of incarceration, who had suddenly burst in, flung the flying squadron aside, and erected a wall of chains to block the demon king of destruction. Amidst their hostile gazes, the demon king of incarceration gave a broad smile. "Therefore I shall." The demon king of incarceration paused, then continued, "Hamel, I will acknowledge you once more. Your sword is sharp enough to have drawn the demon king of destruction here. And your will shall not waver even before the ominous madness of destruction, and your comrades will never betray you. The Demon King of Incarceration chuckled as he raised both hands. Creak creak. Newly appeared chains wrapped around his arms. What are you trying to do? Eugene asked. It was clear the Demon King of Incarceration was also drained of strength. Yet, to muster such power, Eugene's expression hardened. He was wringing it out. He was using the souls he had never given up on, the souls he would carry on to the next era. His cursed, undying soul was being transformed into dark power. If the seal has been broken, then I will simply seal it again, the Demon King of Incarceration replied. Of course, I am not Vermouth, so I cannot hold destruction at bay for centuries. A seal made by sacrificing myself will ultimately be a temporary and unstable measure. But for now, it should be enough to save you all. The sound of low laughter mixed with the sound of chains. The Demon King of Incarceration ran his hand over his chest and then pulled out a part of the ancient chain to hand over to Eugene. As I said earlier, I cannot directly lead you to the center of destruction anymore. But this will suffice. This chain will guide you into the depths of destruction. Eugene could only stare at the Demon King of Incarceration. He was unable to respond. He could not fully understand why the Demon King of Incarceration had made such a choice, why he chose to stand in the way of destruction. Was it because he acknowledged defeat? Couldn't be just that. Something had moved the Demon King of Incarceration's heart. I won't thank you, and I haven't changed my mind about killing you, Eugene said while biting his lips and clutching the chain. The Demon King of Incarceration nodded with a smile. Of course, what I truly desire is death itself. It doesn't need to be restful. Oblivion is fine. Even eternal suffering without death is acceptable. Just knowing that destruction can end and I don't have to move towards the next era is rest enough for me, said the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration wound the chains that flowed from his chest around his hand. Creak. As space distorted, similar chains appeared at the heart of the approaching destruction. The Demon King of Incarceration wrapped the chain linking him to the Demon King of Destruction around his hand several times as he said, "Go." Eugene stepped back. "Do not let the lives sacrificed for you be in vain," the Demon King of Incarceration warned. Fruevil.com. Right, Eugene answered. Eugene pushed Sienna forward even though she hesitated, and hoisted Molin's massive form onto his shoulder. The portal in the sky formed by the chains fell to the ground. Eugene pointed towards the portal with his hand. "We retreat now." His low voice reached the Divine Army. Gilead, leading the Divine Army, hesitated before nodding. At Gilead's gesture, the Divine Army advanced towards the portal while whispering among themselves. "How long can you hold it?" Eugene asked without looking back. His chains trembled as he firmly grasped them. The Demon King of Incarceration vomited blood once more before replying, "I will hold it until you return." "Good," Eugene uttered a single word. He didn't ask for a specific duration but thought it irrelevant. The Demon King of Incarceration was sacrificing everything he had to restrain destruction. Having fought the Demon King of Incarceration, Eugene knew how formidable and tenacious that entity was. Moreover, Eugene didn't need much time. As soon as he recovered physically and mentally, he planned to return here. So for now they would retreat. Eugene did not ask further questions and leaped through the portal of chains. The Demon King of Incarceration did not check his departure but moved his hand. With a roar, all the demons remaining on the battlefield were dragged towards the Demon King of Incarceration. "Ah! High Lord!" The demons screamed and struggled, but they couldn't shake off the chains wrapped around their waists. As they drew closer, their screams turned to curses and abuses. They instinctively knew what the Demon King of Incarceration was attempting. Yes. Pleased by the barrage of curses and insults, the Demon King of Incarceration grinned. "This suits me." The demons were flung over the wall of chains towards the Demon King of Destruction. Thump thump. The demons were instantly annihilated when they came into contact with the spreading colors of the Demon King of Destruction. Their dying souls returned to the Demon King of Incarceration, strengthening his grip on the chains. "Who?" The world cried out around the Demon King of Destruction. The wall of chains trembled as if it might collapse, and blood dripped from the hands of the Demon King of Incarceration as he held onto the chains. "This is emotion." The Demon King of Incarceration laughed as he approached the Demon King of Destruction. As he drew nearer, The wall of chains tightened around the Demon King of Destruction as it raised its hands towards the chains. Boom! A heavy resonance shook the chains and the Demon King of Incarceration, but he did not stop. Vermouth, are these your emotions? The Demon King of Incarceration crossed through the wall of chains to stand before the Demon King of Destruction. The entangled colors were too dense to see Vermouth's form. But the Demon King of Incarceration felt an unmistakable gaze and emotion from it. Since Eugene had passed through the portal and left this space, the Demon King of Destruction could no longer see Eugene. But it was also impossible for it to follow Eugene, as the Demon King of Incarceration held the chains tightly. Is that so? The Demon King of Incarceration whispered, clutching the chains with both hands. You are still there. The shattered wall of chains encircled both the Demon King of Incarceration and the Demon King of Destruction. Chapter 597. Advent 3. The place that Eugene arrived at after passing through the portal of chains was Naren, where they had been stationed during this war. Having exhausted most of his power, this was as far as the Demon King of Incarceration could manage to connect the gate, and Eugene actually found this fact fortunate. From here he could see the battlefield clearly. He stood at the highest point of the city walls and watched as all the members of the Divine Army passed through the portal of chains. Eugene observed the battlefield they had all just vacated. The figures of the Demon King of Incarceration and the Demon King of Destruction were not visible. All that was there now was a massive dome of chains, the last seal the Demon King of Incarceration conjured by sacrificing himself. Eugene narrowed his eyes and intently observed this seal. He could faintly make out the inside of the seal. What he saw within were writhing masses of flesh. It was packed with nur as far as the eye could see. The seal was about the size of the Colosseum where he had dueled Gavid, and it was filled to the brim with nothing but the nur. I can't see, Eugene muttered, rubbing his aching eyes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see the center of the seal, and looking from the outside was futile with so many of the nur crowding the view. Finally, Eugene gave up with a heavy sigh and looked away. What about Molan? He asked the saints inwardly. We are continuing the treatment, but he is not fully recovered yet. Eugene sighed again after hearing Anissa's response. Should he be grateful that Molan was still alive? If so, it wasn't just Molan who was fortunate. They had all nearly died. In fact, many had perished. The scene he had witnessed was still etched in his eyes. Priests of the graceful radiance who had been organized from the start as a suicide squad, spreading their wings and charging at the Demon King of Destruction. If the Demon King of Incarceration had not come this far and acted stubbornly, insisting on testing them and pushing them to their very limits, if there hadn't been a full-scale battle, they would have proceeded with the original plan to enter Pandemonium with only a few key members of the general staff. The graceful radiance would have also sacrificed themselves to become the light for Eugene. But the battle had unfolded differently. Even though some priests had died during the fight, more had survived. But all the members of Graceful Radiance who survived had momentarily blocked destruction in exchange for their lives. And seeing this, the entire Divine Army had charged forward for Eugene. Damn it, Eugene cursed. Whether as Agaroth or Hamel, Eugene had seen his fill of battlefields. This wasn't the first time he'd seen people die for someone else. But this was a first. Those who had charged for Eugene's sake were killed by the very person Eugene had sworn to save. That creature had even tried to kill Eugene. Is that really even Vermouth? Eugene mused, recalling the indistinct figure he had seen. Thinking back on its movements, it seemed devoid of any sense of self. If even a shred of his ego remained, it wouldn't have acted that way. Eugene forcibly erased the haunting scene from his vision. It was because of those who sacrificed themselves without a second thought that Eugene had survived. But in truth... Stupid bastard, he muttered. Eugene gave a heavy sigh and slapped his own face. With a smack, his head was whipped to the side. If I hadn't just stood there like an idiot, Eugene muttered angrily. His excuse had been that he didn't have proper control of his body due to the recoil from overusing ignition in the earlier battle. But that was just that, an excuse. The real reason he had frozen in the face of the descending destruction was that he couldn't bring himself to believe what was unfolding before his eyes. Recalling it made his stomach churn again, and Eugene slapped his cheek harder this time. His head turned with a loud smack. Thinking a slap might not be enough, he had punched himself. But he had hit himself so hard that his head spun, and his mouth was filled with the taste of blood. Idiot, what are you doing? A voice was heard chastising Eugene. Someone steadied Eugene as he staggered, about to fall. He blinked rapidly to clear his vision. He recognized the face and spat the blood pooling in his mouth to the side. What else? I'm doing something idiotic, he answered in frustration. At least you know. Cyan sighed deeply and released his hold on Eugene. He examined Eugene's blood-caked face and body and shook his head, asking, Aren't you going to at least wash up? Speak for yourself, Eugene retorted. It was true. Cyan was in no better condition. Eugene pointed at Cyan's hair, which was matted and stiff with dried blood, and clicked his tongue. Don't come any closer, you smell like a rotting corpse, Eugene commented. That's probably coming from you, Cyan grumbled before sitting down on the parapet of the wall. In the middle of the empty battlefield was the Seal of Chains. The scene he had just witnessed was truly unfathomable and ominous. Just thinking about it made Cyan shiver, but he did not show it and gripped his knees tightly. A lot died, Cyan said, still staring at the empty battlefield. I know, answered Eugene. But far more survived, Cyan continued. Because we won, Eugene replied. Because you won, Cyan corrected him. During the battle, Cyan's hands had moved of their own accord as he wielded his sword. It seemed he had relied more on instinct than reason from some point onwards. He couldn't even remember how many of the enemies he had killed. He was suddenly reminded of his first battlefield. He had killed quite a few people back then too, and frankly it had not been much different this time. But he felt like he could never get used to it. If you hadn't gotten the Demon King of Incarceration to surrender, I would still be fighting out there, right? Cyan asked rhetorically. That's true, Eugene agreed. And if you hadn't brought the sun up in the sky, our side would have suffered much more damage. So. Cyan paused, lowering his head. What the hell was this kid trying to say? Eugene wanted to press him to get to the point, but he remained silent, finding Cyan's earnest yet bedraggled appearance somewhat amusing. Cyan finally continued, You know, I can somewhat guess how you're feeling. Honestly, you are much, in terms of age or experience. Well, still, I am your older brother after all. Who decided that you're my older brother, you little brat? Eugene retorted. Anyway. Cyan bristled, then lifted his head and finally saw it. Eugene was desperately holding back laughter. Seeing that, Cyan felt a mix of embarrassment and as if his blood was boiling. Did he really even need to say this? Now that he thought about it, what reason did he have to offer comfort or encouragement to someone like Eugene? Shouldn't he be the one receiving encouragement after barely surviving through the battle? Get lost, Cyan snapped after contemplation. Why? Keep talking. Try encouraging your younger brother like a good older brother should, Eugene urged him. Encourage? You've handled yourself just fine, Cyan said while jumping down from the parapet of the wall. Looking at your face, it seems like I'm the one who needs to correct my mental state. What I saw earlier. It still gives me chills just thinking about it. You did well not to faint, Eugene complimented. Maybe because it felt similar to something I've experienced before? Like when the Black Lion Castle was invaded? I felt it in Horia too, said Cyan. Although not quite the same, the ominous colors resembled the presence of the specter. Had Cyan not experienced it before, he might have collapsed without resisting. Besides, it wouldn't do for the future head of the Lionheart clan to faint even before the fight starts, right? Said Cyan. Fight? Eugene asked, looking puzzled. This response made Cyan look at Eugene as if he was the strange one. Are you saying we shouldn't fight? Cyan asked. Eugene decided to answer this question with silence. It turned out well, didn't it? We're right at the forefront of the battlefield. And the troops are still here. We could head into battle right now if you were ready, Cyan continued. Aren't you scared? Eugene asked curiously. Of course I'm scared. But that doesn't mean I can run away. Eugene, are you testing me? Trying to see if I'm shaking in my boots. Cyan spat. What do you think I am? Eugene asked. I think you're trash, Cyan answered angrily, subtly hiding his trembling hand behind him. Eugene had noticed the shaking before but had chosen not to tease him about it. Little brat, you've grown up well. Eugene chuckled and patted Cyan on the shoulder, but Cyan grimaced and pushed his hand away. From the way you talk, someone might think you were the one who raised me, Cyan commented in irritation. I can take credit for about half the work, Eugene said with a grin. Stop talking nonsense and go wash up and get some sleep. And don't sleep for half a year like last time, Cyan snapped back. I'll check below first, Eugene answered. Leaving Cyan on the wall, Eugene descended to the temporary camp. The soldiers were checking supplies and they nodded as they saw him and many folded their hands in prayer. Eugene raised his hand slightly in response, then headed to the infirmary. The largest patient in the infirmary was Rhaimira. She hadn't released her polymorph and was curled up on the outskirts of the infirmary, groaning in pain. Ugh. Benefactor, Rhaimira groaned. Rhaimira had coiled her long neck into her chest as she suffered, but upon sensing Eugene's presence, she immediately lifted her head. Her eyes, which were as large as a human's head, brimmed with tears. Benefactor. My wings, she cried. Does it hurt a lot? Eugene asked in concern. It hurts. It hurts so terribly. This is the first time having my wings cut off, Rhaimira sobbed. She suddenly halted and her eyes quivered. Mare. Rhaimira shrieked after lifting her head high. Mare, who had been busily darting around the infirmary surrounded by piles of medicine and bandages, froze in shock. I remember now. It was you, Mare. You cut off this lady's wings as beautiful as obsidian. It was you. Rhaimira cried out accusingly. How dare you raise your voice at your savior? Mare yelled back as she grabbed a nearby bundle of bandages and hurled it toward Rhaimira. Stupid lizard. If I hadn't cut off your wings, that vile light would have devoured your entire body. What do you think would have happened then? I don't know, Rhaimira muttered hesitantly. What do you mean you don't know? You would have been dead. Foolish lizard. Just because you got hit in one wing, you scream miserably and do nothing, so I, being smart and rational, had to step in. Do you understand? Mare shouted back. Just one wing? I have 2 wings, so if one is cut off it's like losing half. Rhaimira's whimpers were cut short. Stop being so dramatic. In the past I've lost both my arms and legs and even had my chest split open to my belly. Even then I didn't moan but remained composed, Mare said proudly, boldly puffing out her chest as she spoke. Though she recounted experiences from when she had been disassembled in Akron, as a matter of fact, Mare did not feel pain. Of course, Rhaimira didn't even think to point this out. She merely curled up further. Look. In truth, this lady is not in pain. This lady just made some noise because my throat was itchy, she muttered. Then stay quiet, Mare shot back sharply, then noticed Eugene. After hesitating for a moment, she passed the bandages and medicine she was carrying to a nearby acolyte. Sir Eugene. Freed, Mare dashed towards Eugene and leaped into his arms. Normally Eugene wouldn't have minded Mare's embrace, but now he could not maintain his stance. Without a moment to brace himself, his waist bent backward and his legs buckled. Even the demon king of incarceration couldn't easily force him to his knees, but now they plowed into the ground too readily. Ugh, he groaned. Eugene had been forced to his knees, but Mare could not be bothered to point it out. She lifted her head from his chest abruptly. She could feel a sticky discomfort on his face. Mare grimaced as she rubbed her face and pinched her nose. Sir Eugene, you smell, she said. What kind of smell? Eugene asked. Blood smell, sweat smell, and various rotten smells, she answered. I did bleed and sweat a lot. I've also been in a pit with rotting corpses, Eugene pointed out. You really need to wash before you sleep, Mare suggested. I was about to wash and then go to bed anyway, Eugene grumbled as he set Mare down beside him. Just as soon as I get a grasp on the current situation. After leaving the infirmary, he entered the quarters of the general staff. Eugene greeted the bustling knights and headed for the private room. You're here, someone said as he entered. The room was filled with his comrades. Sienna was sitting in the center, deep in concentration. She opened her eyes and turned her gaze towards him when he entered. How's the seal? Eugene asked immediately. I've looked everywhere but the core is nowhere to be seen. How about on your end? The barrier I left in Lahanjar is unstable, Sienna responded with a frown. There was an active barrier in Lahanjar suppressing the emergence of the Nur. It should hold easily for another week, but it's not looking good. Has the Nur appeared? Eugene asked. Not yet. It's unstable because I'm preventing them from surfacing. I don't plan to leave it like this, but if the barrier breaks, Countless might flood out, Sienna pointed out. The plains are the same, said Eugene. Eugene approached Molin, who was lying face down, next to whom Anise had collapsed from exhaustion. The Nur are swarming inside the chains. It might not burst because of that, but we need to be vigilant, Eugene continued. Molin had no visible injuries on his back, but he was still unconscious. Eugene threw his blood-soaked cloak to the side. How long do you think it will take for recovery? Eugene questioned. That depends on Molin's mental strength, Anise replied, barely managing to raise her head. No, not Molin. You, said Eugene. Me? Well, I guess I might recover after resting for a couple of days, said Anise. Sienna, what about you? Questioned Eugene. Same for me. But I'm not sure about the demon eye of fantasy, said Sienna. I doubt the demon eye of fantasy will work against the demon king of destruction, Eugene remarked. He glanced at the purple gem next to Sienna. It hadn't shattered, but its luster had faded, and black stains had formed on its surface. A contamination from the corpse poison of the demon king of incarceration. The dark power of destruction is far more sinister and ominous than the dark power of incarceration. Just seeing it could drive one mad, said Eugene. Even Noir had been overwhelmed by the demon king of destruction in Revesta. Even in life she couldn't directly counter that madness. Using the demon eye of fantasy in her unstable spiritual form might lead to her being devoured instead. Hamel, what about you? Asked Anise. Me? Well, a couple of days won't cut it. Maybe a week off might do, he answered. That's not what I'm asking, said Anise. Her gaze sharpened as she struggled to sit up. Can you fight? I wondered what you were going to ask, said Eugene. Anise stared at him in confusion. You're asking the wrong question, Anise. Can I fight? Of course I can fight, said Eugene. Hamel, Anise called out. What you should be asking is, can you win? Eugene chuckled as he clenched his fist. I've always wanted to beat Vermouth. Chapter 598, Advent 4. The memory of their first meeting surfaced in Eugene's mind. After Vermouth had abruptly asked him to become comrades, Eugene had challenged him to test his skills, and lost miserably. He was defeated so thoroughly that he could find no excuses to make. It was an overwhelming loss. Barely, just barely, he had managed to nick Vermouth's collar, and for that he had ended up face-first in the dirt. I have. Wasn't just that one time either. I've never beaten Vermouth. Not even once, Eugene said. After becoming Vermouth's comrade in the beginning, Eugene would pick fights and challenge him to duels whenever he got the chance. He didn't ask to duel with Vermouth because he could win. Rather, he asked for a duel simply because he wanted to duel. Logically, he knew he would lose. He had come to a realization after becoming Vermouth's comrade and fighting together with him. Even if he didn't want to, he couldn't help but realize it, that Vermouth was strong. Vermouth was so strong that Eugene, who had never considered himself inferior to anyone in combat, had to admit that the difference between them was like night and day. No matter how much he trained or gained experience, the gap between him and Vermouth did not seem to narrow. Looking back, it makes sense that I never won. That bastard Vermouth had too many tricks up his sleeve, Eugene grumbled. The way you are complaining, everyone might think you had nothing up yours, Sienna said while raising a finger. A sparkling light enveloped her, cleaning her tattered robe and washing the blood and sweat from her body. You had plenty hidden up yours too, didn't you? Eugene said accusingly. Sienna cleared her throat and waggled her finger as Eugene shot her a pointed look. That's right. Molin and I were the only ones who could boldly say that we had nothing hidden in our back pockets, Anise said with a smirk. Now clean and fresh, she felt content. What? Why me? I had nothing either, Sienna complained. Nothing? Really? The sage of the world tree said it, Sienna. You were favored by mana and magic, which is how you were led to the great forest. Anise responded. That doesn't mean I was some fool who had a dazzling past life, retorted Sienna. Yes, you are different from an idiot who lived a brilliant previous life yet died a fool. But coming back to the topic, it's true that your back pockets were always full, right? Anise said as she casually lay down. That. What about you? You're the same. Sienna shot back. By goodness. Anise exclaimed. Still lying down, she gasped and threw her arms up toward the ceiling. You really are cruel, Sienna. You know the terrible tragedy of my birth. How could you say that? Oh, That's not what I meant, Sienna mumbled, sounding flustered. Anise wailed, you know I didn't choose to be born this way. My goodness, my goodness. Unlike you, who was born under the grace of magic, my birth was marred with hideous fanaticism and blood. She flailed her arms toward the ceiling, her voice filled with distress. As her cries continued, sweat began to bead on Sienna's forehead. I'm sorry. I misspoke, Sienna whispered. Your voice is too quiet, Anise commented. Once again Sienna lost to Anise. She timidly approached Anise, gently took her shoulders and shook her softly. I'm sorry. It was my fault, she apologized sincerely. Well, since you apologize like that, I guess I have no choice but to find forgiveness in my generous heart, Anise replied with a small smile. Obviously, Anise wasn't really angry or sad. She was just exploiting Sienna's guilt. Anise had always been adept at leveraging her unfortunate past to her advantage. And despite knowing full well she would do such a thing, there was no way to win an argument with her. I had nothing either, Molen declared in a firm voice. He had been lying prone listening to the conversation. He slowly lifted his head saying, I was truly born with nothing. And my homeland, the snowy plains, was a harsh land that truly had nothing. The great forest was the same, Sienna retorted. It's different. Sienna, didn't you grow up with the kind elves? Questioned Molen. Do you think the great forest had only elves? There were plenty of monsters and natives too. Do you know how many cannibals were there 300 years ago? Sienna snapped back. So, Sienna, did you grow up with monsters and cannibals? Molen's question was sharp despite having just come back from the brink of death. Well no, but, Sienna faltered. Not all wilds are the same, Sienna. I grew up braving blizzards every day hunting monsters. Molen reminisced about the past while slowly nodding. Tired of watching this pointless conversation, Eugene flopped down on Molen's back and grumbled, What are you guys even arguing about? You were raised in an inland city. You wouldn't understand, Anise responded. You're from the inland too, Eugene pointed out. I spent most of my youth confined to a monastery and I had no parents, Anise replied calmly. Who among us did? And what city? My hometown was a backwater village in Tiraz. Do you know how many monsters were in the forest right next to the village? Kids getting eaten by goblins or orcs was just a part of daily life there, Eugene responded, then slapped Molen on the shoulder. Hey, are you feeling all right? It hurts but I can bear it, said Molen. Bastard, why did you do something that nobody asked for? I would have dodged it myself, Eugene rebuked. Hamel. Even if you hadn't intervened, Vermouth would have dodged it himself, Molen retorted. Eugene was at a loss for words. Had Molen become smarter after coming back from the brink of death? Oh, well, anyway thanks, Eugene mumbled. Knowing that getting angry would only lead to more teasing, Eugene ended the conversation with words of gratitude. Though I was lying down, I heard everything, said Molen. You're lying. You were knocked out. How could you have heard anything? Questioned Eugene. I wasn't knocked out. I was just resting with my eyes closed, Molen explained. Oh, is that so? Eugene said, sounding unconvinced. Vermouth. Can we beat him? Molen asked. At that question, Sienna and Anise looked at Eugene. He didn't answer immediately but scratched his chin and pondered for a moment. If it were the Vermouth from 300 years ago, I think I could beat him with just one finger, muttered Eugene. The Vermouth we know now is not the same, Molen reminded Eugene. That's right. It seems even the Demon King of Incarceration had trouble with the nature he's revealed now, Eugene acknowledged. Does the current Vermouth even have any sanity left? Sienna questioned, feeling a twinge of pain from the part of her chest where she was wounded, even though it had long since healed. She frowned and placed a hand on her chest before continuing. He looked even stranger than when I saw him in the tomb. At least back then Vermouth had a face. He's being manipulated by the Demon King of Destruction, Eugene said while climbing down from Molen's back. It's clear that Vermouth has no intention of attacking us. If that's the case, then it wasn't Vermouth who attacked us. Hamel, but, said Molen. I know. It's possible that Vermouth's sense of self has completely disappeared, Eugene answered. When they saw Vermouth earlier, he had possessed a strange appearance. His face and form were barely visible and shrouded in ominous colors. But it was undoubtedly Vermouth's body. Eugene had felt his gaze. Eugene had stared straight at him but couldn't feel Vermouth's ego in those eyes. We haven't checked yet, Eugene grumbled, dismissively waving his hands. If we can clear away that chaotic mess, maybe Vermouth will come to his senses. If he doesn't, well, we'll think about that when the time comes. We'll just have to beat him into consciousness, Mullen chuckled in response. If we punch a hole in his chest, he'll come to his senses whether he likes it or not, commented Sienna. And if he still doesn't wake up, I'll perform the rites for the dead. It might finally be time for a real funeral, Anise chimed in. Sienna and Anise laughed simultaneously. In the end, none of them intended to give up on Vermouth. The Demon King of Incarceration called it excessive ambition, but since when was it wrong to have excessive ambition? Now that they had set their minds on saving him, that was all they were thinking about. And it wasn't just because it was Vermouth. No matter who it was, they wouldn't abandon a comrade. You all rest, Eugene said, staggering to his feet. I'll go and briefly discuss the situation with the Patriarch. Shouldn't you be the one resting most, Hamel? Said Anise. It's not as bad as when I was in Giabella City, Eugene reassured her. While everyone needed rest, Sienna had to keep an eye on the barrier in Lehanjar, and Mullen and Anise were still unable to move. Of them all, Eugene was in the best condition, and regardless of anything else, he held the title of the Commander-in-Chief of the Divine Army. If you go looking like that, you'll only bring the morale down, Sienna said while pointing at Eugene. In the blink of an eye, his ragged clothes were washed clean, his matted hair soaked and then dried to a fluffy state. The cloak that had been crumpled and thrown aside rose up and returned to its original form, draping over Eugene's shoulders. Just talk briefly and come back. The quicker you rest, the quicker you'll recover, said Sienna. But the more we delay things, the more the Demon King of Incarceration will suffer, right? Thinking about that makes me want to delay even longer, Eugene joked. Stop talking nonsense and just go and come back quickly, Sienna chided as she shoved him towards the door. Urged by the smacks on his back, Eugene was pushed out of the room. However, he could not help but stop after only a short walk down the corridor. I'm heaving, struggling, groaning. In the corridor sat Melkith, conspicuously positioned. She was leaning against the wall. She had slumped down and, with effort, turned to look at Eugene, offering a faint smile. I'm glad you're safe. Blood trickled from Melkith's nose. Eugene glanced at the bundle of tissues that had fallen near her hand. It seemed she had just pulled the tissues that had been plugging her nose. Eugene, if you are safe, then hope continues into the future. For that I am, cough. Melkith struggled to continue. She turned her head and coughed a few times. Unfortunately, blood did not come out as she might have hoped. Should she bite her lip or tongue? Melkith seriously considered it but decided against it. She feared the pain. Ha. I don't regret stepping up for you. Watching Melkith gasping for air, her voice dying, Eugene stood still for a moment before walking towards her. You are the light of the world, a flame. And to keep the flame burning, someone must be the kindling. She was pleased with this line. Melkith shivered at her own words. Eugene was getting closer. As he did, Melkith mixed emotion into her breath and slowly tilted her head. Ah, how dazzling. I am fortunate to have served you. He passed her by. He didn't stop, not even for a moment. He didn't spare her another glance. Eugene simply walked past Melkith without saying a word. Hey! Stung by his indifferent demeanor, Melkith dropped her act. She screamed and grabbed Eugene's ankle. How could you do that? If you're hurt, go see a priest. Don't lie here, go lie in a bed, said Eugene. You didn't feel anything from my touching last words? Melkith shouted. What last words? You're not dead, Eugene pointed out. I was ready to die for you, she screamed. That would have been very touching, but doing this here kind of ruins it, Eugene responded as he helped Melkith to her feet. Now go plug your nose again. Did you really find it touching? Melkith asked expectantly. Of course, answered Eugene. If you really were moved, then do that for me too, Melkith said, gritting her teeth. It wasn't her original intention to make such an open demand, but since her act hadn't worked, she had no choice. What are you asking me to do? Questioned Eugene. You did that thing with Tempest, right? The light. Can't you do that with the other spirit kings besides Tempest? Melkith asked excitedly. What nonsense are you talking about? Eugene asked. You just have to bestow your grace and baptize them. Isn't that how it works? Spirit King of Light. Melkith said dreamily. That's not a spirit. It's divine power, Eugene pointed out. I know. There's no such thing as a spirit of light in the world. But if I, the Grand Spirit Master, say it's the spirit of light, doesn't it become one? I've decided that's how it is, Melkith stated proudly. Are you sure you haven't hit your head? Eugene asked in concern. I'm perfectly fine, answered Melkith. Yes, you seem as usual. Anyway, it's not something I can do just because I want to. The light used Tempest as a vessel. Eugene started to explain. More vessels are better. Undeterred, Melkith followed Eugene, pestering him. But I mean, even if I want to do it for you, I can't. If you really want it, why don't you join the Church of Light and pray fervently? Eugene suggested. The only deity I serve as a god is the goddess of magic, Lady Sienna, responded Melkith. Then ask Sienna to do it, Eugene suggested. I'm asking you because Lady Sienna can't. Melkith whined. As much as I'd like to oblige because I'm grateful, I can't do what's impossible. No matter how much you plead, I really can't, Eugene stated. Really? Asked Melkith. Why would I lie to you? Eugene asked. Only after hearing the same response several times did Melkith's shoulders slump. She chewed her lip, filled with deep disappointment and reluctance. How are Tempest and the other spirit kings? Eugene asked. They're recovering, answered Melkith. So everyone needs time. Lady Melkith, you should also rest instead of wandering around, Eugene suggested. Of course. Melkith wore a look of exasperation. Many thoughts had passed through her mind in the face of destruction. She hadn't simply acted without thinking. However, at that moment she just felt it was necessary. So, without considering the consequences, she had intercepted destruction. Thinking about it now, frankly, it was frightening. Could she do it again next time? Did she have to fight? Was it even possible to win against such an enemy? Can you win if you fight? She asked cautiously. Eugene chuckled dryly in response. Did I fight the Demon King of Incarceration because it seemed winnable? We fought and just happened to win. So, do you think we might win if we fight this time? Melkith probed again. We'll only know if we try, answered Eugene. Can I run away? Asked Melkith. You can go if you want, responded Eugene. Now that you're not trying to stop me, I don't really want to go, Melkith sighed heavily. Chapter 599. Advent 5. When Melkith and Eugene entered the conference room, all the general staff was already gathered. The members of the general staff who had been engaged in a serious discussion rose from their seats as soon as they saw Eugene enter through the door. You all must be tired. There's no need to stand up, Eugene said as he waved dismissively while crossing the room, which was filled with the mixed scents of blood and medicine. These were the highest members of the general staff with formidable skills within the army, yet none were without injuries. Eugene briefly glanced at Carmen's hands, which were tightly wrapped in bandages. He could see blood seeping through the wrappings. It wasn't just for show, apparently. Looks like everyone made it out alive, Eugene commented. He climbed onto the central table of the conference room and sat down, surveying those around him. Each had one or two wounds, but no one had suffered critical injuries. If one had to name the most severely injured, it would be Melkith, who could no longer summon spirits and had suffered internal injuries. But why such long faces? Eugene asked with a half-smile. It was a given, but everyone's expressions were evidently grim, both when he had entered the room and even now. It's not exactly a situation to celebrate a victory, Lovelian spoke up with a sigh. Helmuth. We won the battle against the Demon King of Incarceration. If it had just ended there, we'd be toasting with laughter by now. But it didn't end there, Carmen commented while opening and closing her bandaged hand. We know what it is, but not why it appeared here. I don't know why the Demon King of Incarceration blocked it and why he let us escape. Humiliation, Raphael ground his teeth as he spat the word. To think we were saved by the Demon King of Incarceration. Don't get too worked up. You weren't the only one who was saved, said Eugene. But Sir Eugene, Raphael cried out. Really, calm down. If anyone should feel humiliated, it should be me. I won the fight, yet afterward I survived thanks to the Demon King of Incarceration, Eugene replied as he furrowed his brows, and Raphael had no choice but to seal his lips. Eugene sighed deeply while observing Raphael. Anyway, I'm just glad everyone is safe. With those words, silence enveloped the room. No one dared to speak, and all eyes cautiously observed Eugene's expression. Even Melkith, who had entered with him, was so oppressed by the atmosphere that she kept her mouth shut. That is. It was Gilead who finally broke the silence. He clasped his hands tightly and closed his eyes before continuing, "The Demon King of Destruction, right?" "Yes," Eugene answered. "It might sound strange, and I find it odd myself, but Eugene, when the Demon King of Destruction approached, oddly enough, it felt as though my blood was being drawn to it," Gilead said cautiously. At those words, Guillaume's expression changed. Carmen was the same. They both chewed on their lips, unable to find words to speak. Eugene nodded in response. "Well, it was vermouth that appeared earlier," Eugene said casually. Everyone took a sharp breath in response to Eugene's shocking statement. Vermouth? The great Vermouth himself? Murmurs broke out among the gathered staff. Eugene was saying that the hero, the great Vermouth, the one responsible for forming a peace treaty, the Oath, 300 years ago, had now reappeared as the Demon King of Destruction. If this news spread outside, it would literally turn the world upside down. It's not that Vermouth wanted to attack us. It's just that, having sealed the Demon King of Destruction for too long, his mind has been muddled a bit. A good thrashing might snap him back to reality," Eugene said, waving his hand dismissively. "Naturally, I'll be the one to beat him down. I've wanted to beat him up for ages. Besides, my body now is a descendant of Vermouth's and, well, there are various reasons." He wondered if he should tell them the truth about the identity of the Demon King of Destruction and about the Demon King of Incarceration. Should he speak now? Eugene pondered for a moment and decided against it. The Demon King of Incarceration would not wish it. He could have revealed at any time what sort of existence he was and what he had done for the world. However, the Demon King of Incarceration had never once disclosed the truth throughout his repeated life cycles. True to his name, the Demon King of Incarceration had simply wished to remain a Demon King. Now, to have his past and story revealed, to leave a name in history, or to receive recognition, none of these were things the Demon King of Incarceration would desire. I'm more tempted because he wouldn't want it. A mischievous thought crossed Eugene's mind but remained just a thought. Of course, this was all Eugene's speculation. In truth, the Demon King of Incarceration might even wish for the truth to be revealed. Anyway, Eugene said, he thought it best to ask directly next time, assuming the Demon King of Incarceration was still sane inside his prison. It's complicated, messed up, those kinds of circumstances. I can't quite explain it. But to put it simply, the Demon King of Incarceration is currently sealing the Demon King of Destruction. I don't know how long he can hold it, but he said he would manage until I return. Eugene tilted his head and brushed his chest a few times. He had checked his condition repeatedly. His divine power was sealed and his mana wasn't circulating properly. His body could barely move, which meant a battle was out of the question. Eugene continued, "For now, after a good rest, once my body is back in shape, I'll head straight to the Demon King of Destruction. It's the same deal, just a different opponent. If I win, we can throw a festival or something. If I lose, the world will end." Carmen voiced the unspoken words while staring at her blood-soaked fist. "Given that his very title is the Demon King of Destruction. So it's no different from before. The world would have ended even if we had lost to the Demon King of Incarceration," Guillaume said with a nod. "Actually, this time it feels more urgent and motivating. It's really the last battle and we might even save our ancestor, right?" Guillaume looked around with a bright smile. Despite the situation being anything but hopeful, his cheerful demeanor prompted a few chuckles from the group. "Nevertheless, I won't force anyone. If you don't wish to join the fight, then while I'm getting some rest as I sleep," said Eugene. "That's nonsense," Alchester interrupted him as he dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. "If we lose, the world ends. No one desires that, so everyone must fight. And if we win, won't our names be etched in history, honored for a lifetime?" "Well, I suppose so," answered Eugene. Truly the most dreadful thing isn't dying. It's me fleeing in terror, only for those who remain to defeat the Demon King of Destruction. Just the mere thought of it is horrifying. If that happens, I'd rather take my own life out of shame," Alchester declared. You never even thought of fleeing in the first place, did you, Sir Alchester? Ordis asked with a chuck. I was honestly tempted. Just a glimpse of the Demon King of Destruction was enough to wipe away any desire to fight. But after hearing your words, I couldn't flee even if I wanted to. Well, Eugene scratched his head and grabbed his cloak. I clearly said if you don't want to fight you don't have to. So if you die or get injured this time, don't blame me. He pulled out a bottle from his cloak and placed it on the table. Alcohol? Someone asked. We can't have a grand feast, but we should at least toast. Make sure the soldiers have enough alcohol too, Eugene said. Eugene chuckled as he pulled another bottle from his cloak. It was half full, a gift he had received from Gavid. He swirled the bottle while looking around. Would anyone care for some? He asked. We don't deserve to drink that. Carmen shook her head. That's the wine you got after defeating Gavid Lindman. Oh, Radiant Lion of Victory, didn't you say before? That you'd drink it after defeating the Demon King of Incarceration. And so, the Radiant Lion had become the Radiant Lion of Victory. That wine should be shared with the real heroes of victory, not us. With those words, Eugene was chased out of the conference room. All the other bottles he had stacked in his cloak were taken, and he left with only the half-full bottle in his hand. Eugene stood in the hallway, shaking the bottle a few times before letting out a dry laugh and turning around to go back to his comrades. Ah, Eugene said as he stepped inside. He found that Seal had come to the room while he was away. She was covering Sienna, Anise, and Molen with blankets as they were sprawled on the floor, asleep. She pointed at Eugene as he entered. Where have you been? She asked. The conference room. And what are you doing here? Eugene asked. Can't you tell? I'm covering them with blankets, Seal said. She then sighed heavily, dropping the pillows she had been holding onto the floor, and grumbled, Why does everyone abandon their rooms to sleep here? And on the floor, not even a bed. Maybe they were reminiscing about old times. In the past, after killing a demon king, we used to just collapse and sleep right there, Eugene said. Always with the old stories, Seal said as she rolled her eyes. Eugene clicked his tongue as he glanced at her. Despite being a large room, the floor seemed incredibly cramped with Molen's massive forms sprawled out. Let's wake them up, Eugene suggested. Really? Everyone is sleeping soundly, Seal muttered. They were all wide awake until I left. It's probably been barely 5 minutes since they fell asleep, Eugene explained. Well, even if they were awake 5 minutes ago, now they're sleeping, right? Seal protested. So what? That. A kick shook Molen's body. One kick didn't wake him, but after about 10 Molen's heavy eyelids began to flutter. Do you really have to kick him awake? Seal asked doubtfully. Whether I shake him with my hands or feet, it's all the same, Eugene answered. Lousy brat, Seal cursed. She felt foolish to have even expected humane behavior from Eugene. While Seal shook her head in dismay, Eugene busily moved around. He snatched the blankets off Sienna and Christina, pinched Sienna's cheek and poked Christina in the ribs with his other hand. Ah. Eek. With contrasting groans, the two woke up. As her cheek was being pulled like jelly, Sienna blinked slowly, her eyelids heavy. Christina rubbed the spot where she had been poked while twisting her body. What are you doing? Christina asked drowsily. Wake up, Eugene answered. You told us to rest. Sienna complained. I said rest, not sleep, Eugene corrected her. Hamel, why such petty mischief? Molen asked as he stood up, rubbing his sore shoulder. Petty mischief? Eugene flopped down while holding the bottle of wine. This is a unique bottle of wine. The one Gavid Lindman himself made. I was about to drink it all by myself, but then I thought of you guys and brought it. Hand it over. The mood shifted instantly. Anise sprang up from her seat and dashed over to snatch the bottle from Eugene. She shook the bottle, inspecting the flow of the liquid inside before opening the cork. Isn't this wine aged for at least 300 years and steeped in grand significance? It must be delicious, Anise said with a broad smile. Initially ready to be angry at being woken up so rudely, Sienna and Molen approached the bottle as well. Eventually, all four of them gathered around the bottle, wrapped in blankets. Smiling broadly, Anise placed a glass in front of each of them. Well then. She started filling their glasses. Whoosh. Whoosh. The wind emitted a gloomy sound, trapped and unable to escape. The chains formed an empty core, and it was surrounded by countless monsters clinging together. Between the double layers of chains, the monster's flesh fused and mingled into indistinguishable masses, yet their eyes flickered wildly. It was a wall made of flesh, with hundreds or even thousands of eyes rolling about. Who? Outside the inner wall of chains where the wind wept stood a man. He raised his head. His head throbbed. He had barely regained consciousness, but he felt as if it might slip away again. His hands were trembling and he groped through his faint memories. What happened? What had he done? Did I do this? He mulled over the question, though he knew the answer without needing to delve into deep contemplation. The fragmented memories linked together, and he recalled the stares that had been fixed upon him. Vermouth let out a hollow laugh as he slumped down. It felt like the inside of his skull was being scraped with fingernails, and what was scratched off left behind dark masses that seemed to spread. The dark masses did not tolerate Vermouth. Even now they pressed down on Vermouth's ego, trying to seize his body. It wasn't greed for his body. It did not desire such vessels. It had no such cravings. Its attempt to seize the body was simply because Vermouth had detached from itself. But was that really true? Vermouth chewed on his lip. The demon king of destruction had no self. Perhaps it once had, but that had long since collapsed. Now it was merely a calamity that sought nothing but destruction. Then why had he attacked Sienna 200 years ago? At that time, Vermouth had gone to seal the Moonlight Sword. He had planned to encounter and converse with Sienna. He knew she would come searching upon detecting the intrusion, and he had hoped to receive the necklace from her. But his consciousness had blurred. When he regained his senses, he had already inflicted a fatal wound on Sienna. This time too, Vermouth thought in panic. He had failed to endure the seal and had his body taken over by destruction again. And then he arrived here, attacked everyone, and regained consciousness once more. All of this terrified Vermouth. If the demon king of destruction had no self, then who was the one that desired to attack Sienna 300 years ago, and who wanted to come here today to attack everyone? No, Vermouth groaned, clutching his head. It wasn't me. In the cage of chains with no one to answer, Vermouth quietly wept.